Testing. What's up? I'm Jacob Blitzo, your Elixir Mentor, and welcome to another exciting episode of the Elixir Mentor Podcast. This is where we discuss everything related to Elixir, from interviews with enthusiasts, pioneers in the community, to innovative projects and libraries shaping Elixir's future. So let's get started. Today, I'm excited to introduce Adolfo Neto, a professor at the Federal University of Technology in Paraná in Brazil. Adolfo is a dedicated advocate for knowledge sharing in tech. He's recognized for his contributions in the Elixir community and his effective teaching approaches. Adolfo, it's fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you for being here. Do you want to just give a brief introduction of yourself?
First of all, thanks for having me here, Jacob. And I love your podcast because you interview so many nice people. And I see I didn't finish yet, but I started listening to the last interview with Carlo Gilmar, which is a great guy. And I see that the next in your schedule is also a Brazilian, Daniel. So lots of other great interviews. I'm a professor here at the Federal University of Technology in Paraná, and I teach. I teach logic for computer science research methods, and also I teach introduction to functional programming. And of course, because I'm a big fan of Elixir, I use Elixir for teaching functional programming. And of course, as a professor, I do research, I do outreach. I have several podcasts. I have one podcast where I interview women in computer science, of course, with my colleagues and students. I have a podcast about Elixir. It's in Portuguese, Elixir em Foco. I'm a part of the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation. I'm in the education working group, where we try to plan how to bring more educational resources to the community, and many other things. Oh, I also have a podcast in Portuguese about software engineering, Fronteiras da Engenharia de Software. And that's sometimes I think that I do too much. I should say no to some things. But for instance, in the next, I believe, month, my friend and colleague Lee Barney is going to present a paper at the Erlang workshop, which we co-wrote. It's called Unsafe Impedance. And these are some of the activities in which I am involved.
I feel like I have to learn Portuguese just to enjoy all your great content. You're doing a lot. How many podcasts are you doing?
And I didn't mention that I also have a podcast in Portuguese, in English, sorry, which is Professor Adolfo Neto Podcast. And this is the podcast that I do when I have time. I have some time, and then I interview someone in English. I have interviewed some people from the Elixir community, but also some professors in software engineering. But I could say that I have 3 podcasts which are regular, for which Emilia's podcasts, I publish 2 episodes every month, and Fronteiras da Engenharia de Software and Elixir em Foco, it's 1 episode every month. So in total, there are 4 episodes which I have to release every month. And when I have time, I publish 1 episode of the Professor Adolfo Neto podcast. My next guest in this podcast, I have not yet recorded this interview, but it's a professor from Italy called Nicole Novielli, and she's going to talk about emotions in software engineering. My last episode, which is already published, was with Alexander Serebrennik. He talked about diversity and inclusion in software engineering. So you see, these are topics in which I'm interested, but I'm no expert. So I like to listen to the experts.
Yeah, that's why I try to get as many awesome people from the Elixir community on. Like, I learned so much with my guests, and it's awesome. And There are a lot of Brazilians in the Elixir community, aren't there?
Yes, because the language was created by José Valim, although I don't know if you. I also, when I have time, I like to study the history of Elixir. So I
Hmm.
know that when José Valim created Elixir, and I know that because I can listen to Portuguese, but I believe he already told that story in some other in English. But he was already living in Poland, so he was working there for a company in which he was one of the co-founders, Plataforma Tech, and he created the language there. And okay, it's a language created by a Brazilian. We know that the core team has lots of people from different nationalities: Italy, Poland. I believe Poland. I'm not sure. There is also a lot of Polish people in the community because Valim is in Poland. But my point is, when I got to know that, oh, there is this language, Elixir, and it was created by a Brazilian and it's functional. Oh, I want to study that language. And then in 2018, I went to an in person event, Elixir Brazil 2018. Valim was there in person. But it was not only because Valim was there. It was because it was a great event, a great community. I saw the diversity and the great talks there. So I want to go deep into Elixir, and that's why I got involved. And then I went to Elixir Brazil again in 2019. Last year, I organized the first in-person Elixir event after the pandemic. It was Elixir Fortaleza 2023. This year, I was part of the organization of Elixir Days, which was in São Paulo. São Paulo is the largest city here in Brazil. So there are so many great things in the Elixir community, and sometimes I tell people I'm not an expert in all the technical things that Elixir can do, but I sure know the community. I know what the community is doing. I know where they communicate. I know, for instance, here in Brazil there is lots of people in our Telegram group, and I created a Telegram group for people that want to discuss Elixir in English, but it's not as active as the Brazilian Telegram working group. And that's it. That there are many venues for people to join the community and to to get to know more about this great language.
Yeah, I've always been one that stays in the shadows. So I've been programming for like 10 years now, and I just picked up Elixir in like 2020. And I learned it and I was building a product with it, but I just read forums and kind of stayed off the spotlight. And I had a lot of trouble finding like good resources. And I remember that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a YouTube channel. And so I went against my best judgment and I started a YouTube channel. And I don't know, it's been pretty awesome because I'm meeting people like you. I had Jose on, and that was amazing. I was not prepared. Like, I did not think he was going to answer and be like, yeah, I'll come on your podcast. So it's been an exciting year since I started my podcast. It's been a lot of fun, and it forces me to kind of stay updated in everything that's going on because, I have all these awesome guests coming on to share what they're working on, what they've heard about, what tools they like to use. And so it's just a wealth of knowledge just being poured down my throat. So
Yes.
it's been a lot of fun. And I'll have to say the Elixir community is one of the nicest communities that I've ever been involved in. Even from like an outside perspective, you never saw really any negativity or trolling among the Elixir community like you do in other tech niches.
I don't know much about that because I have never been a part of other communities. I was a little bit a part of the closure community while I was in the US. I have spent 1 year in the US. It's part of our job when we have funding to stay a period in other university. I spent a sabbatical year at North Carolina State University in Raleigh.
Oh,
And
that's awesome.
one thing that I really liked about the scene, the tech scene in the Raleigh area, because it's not only Raleigh. Have you ever been to Raleigh, North Carolina?
No, I haven't.
Because there is Raleigh and there's also Duke. In Raleigh, they have the North Carolina State University. In Duke, they have the world famous Duke University.
Hmm.
And in Chapel Hill, which is you cross the street from Duke and you are in Chapel Hill. I believe it's something like that. But you have the University of North Carolina. So they have these three big universities. And approximately in the middle, they have the Research Triangle Park, where they have lots of companies. IBM was there. I don't know if it's there yet, but so they had a lot of meetups. I could go to a meetup basically from Monday to Thursday. I would go to a meetup, and there was this closure meetup at Cognitect, which is a company which was founded by some some important people in the closure community. And I went there and I really liked the closure community. And then I went to an event in Washington DC, and I was studying closure, but then I'm going to study Elixir because the creator of Elixir is Brazilian. I still like the closure community when what I can see of it, but I don't follow. I really don't follow what they are doing as I do with Elixir. And I have to add Erlang too, because of course Elixir is part of the Erlang ecosystem. And I forgot, but I have also a podcast about Erlang, which is in English. Hello Erlang. Right now it's on pause because one of my co-hosts in this podcast is Slava. Slava is on Ukraine, and everybody knows what's happening on Ukraine right now. So he has some other things to worry right now, which are more important than our podcast. But we have published 3 interviews of the Hello Erlang podcast. So that's it. I really enjoy the community, but I'm not able to compare it to other communities. Here in Brazil, the Python community, what I see from the Python community in Brazil, it's also great. So I cannot say we are better or worse than other communities, but I like what I see.
We'll just say we're better, right? No. No, I love that. What like with your background, what originally got you on track to be in software engineering or computer science, and what eventually led to being a professor?
Um, well, first, when I was doing my undergraduate course at the Federal University of Alagoas and undergraduate course in computer science, I got to know Lisp. That's why years later I got interested in Clojure, because Clojure is they say Clojure is a dialect of Lisp. And but my graduation project and also my master's thesis was in logic for computer science. And then when I decided to do a PhD, I did my PhD in logic for computer science. I really only got interested in software engineering while I was doing my PhD. I got interested in agile methods, Scrum, XP, but the focus of my PhD dissertation was logic for computer science. It was only when I started working here at the Federal University of Technology Paraná in 2008, we decided to create a professional masters. So it's not a regular masters. Here in Brazil, we have some masters programs which are much more focused on science. At least that's what people say. It's much more focused on science than master's programs in the US or in Europe. In US and Europe, it's like all master's courses are professional masters. But here in Brazil, the popular masters, they are always more scientific. So we decided to create a professional masters. And I thought, oh, if it's a professional masters, no professional wants to study logic for computer science. This is theoretical. So I remember that thing that I studied in during my PhD, Azure methods. So I proposed to teach Azure methods to the professional master students. That's when I got more interested in software engineering, which nowadays is my main research area. And then when I try to see Elixir, I always try to see it as from the point of view of software engineering, the community, and what the language provides to developers. I'm not. I'm far from people that, for instance, there is this. I don't know if he already finished his PhD. Did you interview Guillaume Duboc, the guy that is creating the type system? Not
I have
yet, right?
not. No, no.
He would be a good name. But I don't know if he already finished his PhD, but I know that now there is also a woman, a postdoc, working with the same professor, Giuseppe Castagna, because the type system is the work of Guillaume Duboc, Giuseppe Castagna, and José Valim. They have
Mm.
published a paper. And okay, so Giuseppe Castagna, for instance, is a great researcher in programming languages, but uh, I didn't know anything about him before this type system project because I don't do research in programming languages. But uh, so I always try to see things from the point of view of software engineering.
That's awesome. Do you do you teach specifically just Elixir at the university, or is it more of a broad computer science, like theoretical?
Oh, as part of these professional masters, I can suggest some courses for the students. And in the last, I believe, 4 or 5 years, I suggested a course which is an introduction to functional programming. So the course is about functional programming. And I tell the students, oh, there is Elixir, there is Haskell, there is Erlang and Clojure. There are many functional programming languages. Some are pure, some are not pure. I'm going to use Elixir because I like Elixir, and that's it. And I say, oh, this thing you cannot do with Elixir, but you can do it with Haskell. But you see, I'm always approaching the functional programming subject from the point of view of what's necessary for a software engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it useful for a developer? I'm not approaching from the point of view of a programming language researcher, which is trying to, what can I add to this language? Which concept can I add so that this language becomes more expressive, more efficient, like so many great programming language researchers do.
I love that. I feel like Elixir is a really easy syntax to read, even if you're not a programmer, too. Like you can pretty much understand what's happening just reading lines of code, at least in my experience.
Yes, I can't say in the past I had a student because he just told me that he's going to quit the master's program. But one of our projects here was to, because you see, if you suppose you have someone who has never touched a computer and he wants to use Elixir. No, he wants to learn programming, and someone's, start with Elixir. For me, if you use, for instance, IX, it's not that uh, attractive. Live
Hmm.
book is more attractive. But if you open live book, you see that it's more focused on people who already know how to program, which is natural. Most things that are in the ecosystem are focused on people that already know how to program, because that's most of the people who are going to use it. So our idea was to create a live book for beginners, which was a version of live book that a beginner could open and start programming. And maybe we had some ideas, we didn't implement anything, but for instance, if you go to Duolingo, that app, you have some gamification to help you
Hmm.
keep learning. So maybe add some gamification to livebook and other resources, so that was the idea. But right now this project is on halt. But maybe if someone is listening in and wants to do a master with me, or even just collaborate with research, I'm open. You can find me on the internet. I'm very active on Twitter as Adolfo NT.
Yes, and all of your information is in the description. So if you guys aren't following Adolfo, follow him on Twitter. I love that idea. So a live book, like kind of where it just works out of the box. You might not have to import packages and things, and you can kind of do the basics of Elixir then, or maybe just like have a workbook walk you through basics and syntax. Is that kind of the idea?
we as When we do science, we don't have the answer, right? So the plan was to experiment. So for instance, we could have 5 students to try this live book for beginners without gamification, and 5 students to try it with gamification. 5 students would try this live book for beginners with videos and lessons, and the others just live book and some task, or something like, do you know exorcism?
Yes. Yep.
So some variation of exorcism, or maybe some connection to exorcism, so that the person could, oh, now you learn that, solve this exorcism problem here on live book, and then it's going to check if it's correct. Right now these are only ideas. I have nothing ready to show the world, but
Gotcha. The
I
good old A/B testing approach.
yes.
You have to do that, right, to find the perfect niche for your product. But I love that. Now, you're a professor and you use a lot of platforms for teaching. And what do you find like the best approach for community building, education, like kind of getting your word out between like blogs, YouTube, in person, podcasts like this? What is your favorite approach to sharing your wealth of knowledge?
Oh, I'm not sure this is the answer you were expecting, but I mean, I liked listening to podcasts. That's why I became a podcaster. And I like tweeting and reading other people's tweets. That's why I tweet a lot. I'm not sure. Sometimes I tell my students, my young students, which are 18, 19 years old, and so I'm on Twitter, but you shouldn't be there because there's a lot of toxicity, toxic content there. So right now in Brazil, Instagram is much more popular than Twitter. And if I would say, tell some of my students to have a social network presence, I would advise, and I'll go to Instagram, because there you can find more people, but or LinkedIn, which is the professional social network. So basically what I do is what I like doing. I have this choice. I can, oh, I'm on Twitter, I have podcasts, I also publish YouTube videos, but that's far from being my main source of content. Sometimes I write blog posts, and I do something that most that would be terrible for people that want to make money. I don't make money from all this content that I produce. It's that I'm everywhere. I have an account on Mastodon, also on Blue Sky and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube. I have for each podcast I have a different YouTube channels, and if all my content were in only one YouTube channel, I would have a larger channel, but that's okay. My goal is to make it better for the listeners or the viewers in the case of YouTube. So I believe it's working well for me. And one interesting thing that, for instance, as a researcher in software engineering, as I told you my story, I did my PhD in logic for computer science, and then after some years, I started doing research in software engineering. So I'm not a top researcher in software engineering, nor in Brazil, nor in the world. But because I have a podcast about software engineering, many researchers from Brazil know me. They know who Adolfo Neto is because I have a podcast and I bring them to my podcast. So that's for me is great too. So uh, there are some advantages of doing what you are doing here that it's not they are not money related. It's great to know that people listen to your podcasts, watch your YouTube videos, and that's enough for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, don't start YouTube videos and podcasts if you think you're going to be rich. You got to do it for the love of the game, right? Because especially in Elixir, it's just so niche. The 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 difficult part is getting outside of the community. How can you talk a JavaScript developer into learning Elixir? How can you talk, all these other developers? Why is Elixir so good and why should they waste their time? So that's the hard part, right? Crossing that bridge. And
And
so,
I have a curiosity that just today I posted on Twitter the videos that were most watched on my YouTube channel in English. I have a YouTube channel in Portuguese and another one in English besides, and also I have the ones for my podcast, Elixir em Foco, Emília's podcast, Fronteiras de Engenharia de Software. And the most watched video in the name of the channel is something like Elixir Erlang, Elixir and Erlang with Adolfo, Elixir Erlang and the Bing with Adolfo Neto. But the most watched video there is related to the Lean programming language. So it's that's the way YouTube works. Sometimes, if I wanted to make money, I would. Oh no! Now I'm going to only create videos about Lean. By the way, do you know the Lean programming language?
no, I do not.
It's another programming language created by a Brazilian. It was created by a Brazilian called Leonardo de Moura, and it started as a theorem prover, and now it's a functional programming language. It has types, and
Okay.
you can verify software using Lean. AWS, Amazon
AWS,
Web
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Amazon Web Service uses Lean. There are some great mathematicians use Lean to prove theorems. So it's an interesting language too.
That's awesome. I'm curious. I'm going to look up. I don't know what my most popular video is, and I kind of want to know now.
It's probably the one with a link because everyone wants to. Oh, of course, there you also have some videos where you teach something, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but the
Well,
interview, it's probably the one with the link.
oh, Jose for sure. Yeah. For my podcast, he's the most popular one. And what's funny is I started doing these live streams where I'm just going through like the getting started guides. And those are really popular. People just love hanging out when I read documentation and try examples. So it's a lot of fun because like I normally, when you read documentation, you're always like scanning it for what you need at that moment. It's not very often you sit and you read all the documentation. So that's been fun. I just wrapped up doing the getting started guide, and now we're doing the anti-patterns section, and it's a lot of fun. And so my most popular video is using Phoenix Framework to create an Elixir REST API project. So like the opening video, the create, Phoenix new and, creating it, setting it up to Postgres. And then my second most popular video is setting up a Docker container locally. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, kind of crazy. We just got to keep getting the word out why Elixir is awesome. I mean, I had a buddy telling me to learn Elixir for like 3 or 4 years before I even looked at it. I was like, dude, I don't have time. I was in my JavaScript world, my object oriented. I did a little Swift. I was like, I don't have time to learn another language. And then I started building a project where I researched, frameworks and languages and stacks. And I was like, I think the Beam VM is my best choice. And then I started learning Elixir and fell in love with the syntax. But it took me probably a year of doing things wrong for me to truly appreciate Elixir. But it was quite the journey. And I'm glad I took it because now I don't want to write in anything else. I try to do everything Elixir.
And do you have a job where you do Elixir?
So I had to create my own job to do Elixir. So I have basically kind of like a consulting agency. So just we build custom software for small businesses and things like that. And most of our money, so I was getting a lot of websites, like a lot of website work where people just wanted single page apps. And I got really like annoyed by it because I was like, dude, I don't want to just build websites. But then I ended up building kind of like my own website hosting service using Phoenix and the Ash framework, and I'm routing everything like through Plug, and so I have all these single page web apps now that are Phoenix Live View apps, and so I made it more fun for myself, and I can now host people's websites a lot cheaper because I just need one Ubuntu server or droplet instead of using all these like platform as a services and paying for every app you create. So that's been a lot of fun. So now I can host all these web apps on my little website hosting service. And so yeah, I had to make my own work because unfortunately it's really hard and competitive to get a good job in the Elixir space. And maybe it's shifting a little bit. And I think the only way we can create more jobs in the Elixir space is just to start our own software companies where we use the pedal stack.
Yes, maybe that's a big concern for me because as you see, I bring people to the Elixir community, but then they can't find jobs. So that's a big problem. So we are trying to work with that in the education working group, and also informally, I see the efforts by Brian Cardarella, also very active on Twitter, on X now. I believe he announced that he's not going to give talks at Elixir-related events like CodeBeam or Elixir Conf. He only wants to give talks to other conference where you can find people from other ecosystems and then show them how Elixir is great. And I remember that one of the best talks ever in the Elixir ecosystem, the Elixir Erlang ecosystem, is that one by Sasha Yurik. And I don't remember the name of the talk, but if you put Sasha Yurik on YouTube, that's probably the talk that's going to be the first one. And it was at a go-to conference, which is not an Elixir related conference. So So for people who are watching or listening and oh, there is no Elixir meetup here, there's no Elixir conference here, go to other meetups, go to attend other conferences, and maybe show them what Elixir is capable of doing. Elixir and Erlang and Glean also love Glean, and maybe in a few years it will be easier for a junior developer to find a job.
Yeah, for sure. And that's all we can do. I think that's really smart of Brian to only talk at non-Elixir conferences, because that is the only way to spread the word, right? I love that. I
Yes.
actually just finally got him scheduled. He's a very busy man. He's coming on the podcast at the beginning of September, so that'll be a lot of fun. And I
Great.
know he just had a big release with his Live View Native.
Yes.
So I'm sure that's going to be what we're talking about. And I'll have to, hopefully I get some time before he comes on to play around with that framework, because it looks like it's pretty cool. But
Yes.
yeah, I always tell people though that are looking for Elixir jobs that, having a normal 9 to 5 is just as scary as building your own company, because you can lose your job overnight anyways. So you might as well build that idea and start your company.
Yes, I have interviewed. Sorry, I don't remember his name right now. Oh, it's here. Peter Ulrich. It's
Oh,
different for
yes.
Brazilian.
Yep.
Did you have him here?
Yep, I had him on. He just released a few months ago his video education platform, indie courses, and I actually have
Yes.
a course on his platform. After I talked to him on my podcast, I was like, you know what? I'm going to move my course over to your platform.
Oh,
So
that's great.
yeah, you got to. That's another thing. When I discover like good software solutions that are built, you know, in Elixir or in the pedal stack, I like to support them. That's another way to keep those companies rolling, right?
Yes, yes. So I believe there are opportunities maybe for people that don't have this entrepreneur mentality mindset. Maybe it's a little bit more difficult because you have to find a junior developer job. But for people that like you, like Peter, maybe they can create their own jobs using Elixir.
Yeah. No, I get it. There's definitely two different types of people. And I think like the hard part to watch with the whole tech space right now is you see less and less junior dev jobs across the board in all technologies. Everyone wants senior devs. And I think it's a very dangerous slope to go down, because it's great right now. But what do we do when we stop training junior devs with senior devs? There's going to be a weird gap. And then all these senior devs are going to start retiring, and we're only going to be able to replace them with junior devs.
Yes, that's something that worries me about Erlang because in the Erlang ecosystem, the name of the ecosystem is Erlang ecosystem. We have the Erlang ecosystem foundation, but we see much more interest for Elixir, even I believe Glean than Erlang. So what's going to happen when people
Yeah.
like, for instance, Robert Verding, I believe he could be retired. Uh, Francesco Cesarini, those people maybe in a few years, maybe in 20 years, are going to be retired. Who is going to replace them in the community?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think one good thing though with like Elixir and Gleam, I think it brings more attention to Erlang. So like Elixir is easier to learn, right? And then as you start like needing to do more and more complicated things, you're going to start understanding the Erlang aspect of it a little more. And so maybe through Elixir, gaining in popularity, will create more Erlang developers. And At least that's the way I look at it. I think it only helps the Erlang ecosystem because I think it was like someone tweeted on one of the posts that you gave Elixir Mentor a shout out, which I was like, you know what, you need to be on my podcast. But someone was like, when are you going to stop promoting Elixir and all these other languages and promote Erlang? And I kind of read that and I was like, I think it does both.
Yes, you know who that guy is?
No, I
It's
don't.
Slava. It's
Uh,
the Ukrainian that from
oh,
the Hello
okay.
World podcast.
That's funny.
Uh, I have to Slava and also Brujo Benavides and some other members of the Erlang community. They go to uh, Code Bean events and they give talks. They are trying to make Erlang more popular. It, it's not that easy because you see, and I would like to also right now ideas for research are popping up in mind. But for instance, I would like to try. Oh, let's take 20 students. For these 10 students, I'm going to start then with programming language using Elixir, and those other 10 are going to start with Erlang. My initial hypothesis is that it's going to be much easier with Elixir because of
Hmm.
all the tools around Elixir. And for instance, the fact that in Erlang you have to finish all lines with a dot, that's something that somehow students can find it difficult.
Hmm.
So, okay, so we have this problem with Erlang beginners. As I told you, we have an Elixir Telegram group in Brazil, and we have an Erlang Telegram group in Brazil. And the the Elixir group is much more active than the Erlang group. So we need more people studying Erlang too if you want
Yeah.
to keep using. And we know that there are some companies that still use Erlang and use no Elixir. For instance, I believe WhatsApp, they use no Elixir, only Erlang. So
Okay.
there's maybe there are jobs for those people too.
I'm sure there's a lot of great benefits to just using Erlang as well. I think the major appeal with Elixir is just the modern syntax, right? It doesn't feel like a programming language. It's more readable and like I think it's the favorite programming language I've ever written. And I used to be a huge fanboy of Swift when it first came out. And because like Objective C, if you've ever written in it, it's not great. It's not fun. And then before that, I was doing Java, and I don't ever want to have to write Java again. So like writing Elixir is kind of a treat, and I should probably do more in Erlang because I don't do a lot, but it would probably be good. I could even maybe do some Erlang videos on my channel and bring some attention to the language.
I have a suggestion to everyone. There is an Erlang track on Exercism, and my suggestion is after you, at least when when you get to the more difficult exercises, you should ask for a human mentor because the of course there is the automated feedback, but the human mentors, they can help you a lot. I believe I was mentored more than 5 times by Brujo Benavides, who is a great guy, and he's from Argentina, but now he lives in Spain. And he used to give me great feedback about Erlang. So that's my suggestion. Go to Exercism. We right now we have tracks at Exercism for Erlang, Elixir, Gleam, and I believe they have a track for LFE too, but I'm not sure.
Okay, nice. I used to use Exorcism a lot when I was first learning Elixir, but I haven't been there in a few years. I should go and do some of the exercises. They're a lot of fun.
Yes. Yeah,
Do you? Oh,
no,
sorry.
I should say the people at the Exorcism organization, they are great. They deserve all If you can contribute and give them some money, they deserve it.
Yeah. Organizations like that are amazing, and it's always good to support them when you can, for sure. Um, so what is your advice to developers for kind of overcoming barriers in community participation? Like for me, for instance, I never participated in communities until Elixir, right? And it took me 2 years of writing Elixir code before I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make content. But how can we peel back maybe the imposter syndrome and get people participating sooner and not just being on the sidelines?
First, I believe there are different ways of participating in a community. For instance, if you are on the Elixir Telegram group, this is a kind of participation. If you go to a meetup, right now, I believe after the pandemic, in-person meetups started um, uh, appearing again, but not as frequent as they were before the pandemic.
Yeah, COVID kind of changed meetup used to be so awesome, and then like I get it, they had to make shifts and change things or they probably would have went out of business, but the overall like culture of meetup definitely shifted.
And I believe that's in part because people think, oh, I am. That's what I think sometimes. Oh, I have to take a bus, and it will take me 1 hour to get to a place, and I'm going to stay there for 2 hours and then 1 hour back. It's a lot of work. So, but okay, there. If you have a meetup in your region, you should attend. You should go to. There is the Telegram groups. Also, Elixir Forum is great. I believe you have many choices. You just have to choose what's more comfortable for you. There is Discord. Oh, in Elixir Forum now they have a chat where you can ask questions online and receive immediate feedback. There is the Slack. There is one Slack for Elixir, Slack server. Is it server that we say? Slack server for.
Server, I don't know what the Slack one is. I avoid Slack at all costs. Uh,
But they
uh,
have a
yeah,
server
but it's
for.
the Elixir language server. Yeah.
Yes, there is one for Elixir, there's one for Erlang, and there's one for the Erlang Ecosystem Foundation. So you can join
Okay.
three of them. And also there is Discord. I believe Discord is only for Elixir. I don't think there is a Discord for Erlang. There is
Okay.
the Elixir Forum, Erlang Forums, which includes Elixir and all Erlang ecosystem languages. There are people who are crazy enough to in 2024 still be on Twitter or X like us because
I enjoy X, and it has a good sized community for Elixir and Erlang on X. For some reason, software engineers love the format.
yes, that's why I didn't leave. I know several people who left X because of harassment. I usually don't suffer from that, so that's not a problem for it. But I
No.
understand people, trans people, LGBTQ people who are LGBTQ, yes, and plus people who suffer some harassment, and now the owner of X thinks, oh no, cisgender is a slur, but other things you can tolerate. So that's another problem. But I see there are still people, great people there on X. They are usually very friendly, like you and Carlo Gilmore and Peter Urich and Brian Cartarella. Jose Valin is there too. And what else? There
I
are.
just don't participate in any it's not good for your health. Even if you disagree with people, I have no reason to argue with people. Like have your opinions. I'm going to exist in my world and just be nice. And my overall health and life will be much better and happier.
Yes, and also there are some YouTube videos and particularly podcasts. I believe the Elixir community is has some very good podcasts. Thinking Elixir and Elixir Wizards. I
Hmm.
believe those are the oldest who are still active. But do you know the Elixir Fountain podcast?
I don't.
Have
I probably listened to it back a few years ago. It's so hard to keep up with podcast. Like I love podcasts, but it's hard for me to keep up with them.
Yes, the Elixir Fountain podcast was the first podcast dedicated to Elixir. Of
Okay.
course, there were Elixir related episodes in other podcasts, and Valim, when Valim was interviewed, or some other person. There was a podcast called Mostly Erlang, which is it's funny because it's still you can still find that podcast. It's very old. It's I believe it was created back in 2009. But okay, Elixir Fountain. The problem with Elixir Fountain is that the creator of the podcast one day he decided to remove all episodes, and now that there are only 3 episodes on their feed, Elixir Talk, and there's I'm probably missing some Elixir Mix. I don't know what's the status of Elixir Mix right now, but I was interviewed by them twice. I love the Elixir Wizards and Thinking Elixir crowd. They did a get together before the Elixir Conf, I- an episode. They called they gave a fun name, but I don't remember. So you have choice. And also YouTube channels. You have many choice
You
to.
also have
Oh,
Beam. Is it Beam Radio? I think that's one.
oh yes, being radio by my friend Bruce Tate.
Yeah, Bruce, he's great.
I finally met in person Bruce Tate and Meg Tate here because they came to Brazil to the Elixir Days
Oh, that's
event.
amazing. Yeah, Maggie seems like she's super sweet, and Bruce is awesome. I've had Bruce on, and he was great. And then Maggie and we've only talked through like email and Twitter, but she seems very nice as well.
Yes, they wrote a book called Currently Away. It's about their Great Loop trip.
Yep.
It's on Amazon. Great book. I'm in the middle, a little bit more than the middle, but it's very funny. And okay, so you can choose. It's and also if you want to learn following a structured approach, you mentioned that your course on in the course is it about Elixir?
Yeah, it's a like a comprehensive introduction. I go everything from like basics from like data types all the way up to like OTP, gen server stuff. And I still have to finish it. I've kind of got burned out with editing videos, but I have two more sections to do. I have like a Erlang interoperability section or module that I'm going to do, and then the final project where I'm creating a analytics server API. So it'll kind of work like Plausible, but a way scaled back version. But I want to just teach people how to make a useful application. Because I think that's the problem is you can learn all these things in containers, but then how do you apply it to a real project? So I always like to do project-based education.
So my point is there are also some very good courses, Elixir and Erlang related courses like yours, and um, Groxio has some
Groxio
courses.
has some great stuff. And well, like my YouTube channel, I have a GitHub gist clone that I have a whole playlist of. It's not fully completed yet, but it there's quite a few videos. I think I have like 23 videos up for that. And then I have like a real basic API playlist where I go through manual authentication to show you how difficult it can be. And then, in the gist clone, you use the Phoenix auth gen, and what you get out of the box is much easier than what I manually produce, and probably a lot more secure. But so I have a couple playlists, a project playlist, and then I have a basics playlist too that just kind of introduces each concept.
And of course, we cannot forget that we also have books. Some books are physical, like
Yes.
Sasha Yurik has
Yeah,
that
his
great book.
Elixir in Action is amazing.
It's in the third edition, so I believe
Yep.
it's the most up to date Elixir book.
Yep. And it's probably
Uh,
actually one of the best ones you can get your hands on, I think.
And there are also some great books by pragmatic programmers. They have
Mm-hmm.
some great books. And finally, of course, we have the documentation, which is great. Oh, Elixir School. Do you know Elixir School? It's also a great site for
I
people
know
who are
of it. I
starting.
have not dug into it, but yeah.
You told about videos reading the documentation. I have some videos in Portuguese where I read Elixir School lessons, and then oh no, now
Okay.
you do that, and then I try on IX. Some people like to watch this kind of video.
I know. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun as long as the people watching are interactive with you. And then it's a lot of fun. Because then you can kind of like chat and go through documentation. And then it's fun for everyone. I'm going to butcher. We have some comments here that we can probably talk about. I'm going to butcher this name because I'm very American. But I think it's Guero. I don't know. Well, anyways, he said that in his experience, functional languages are too difficult to learn. Well, people think that, and he said he was hooked right when he worked with Elixir. And in my so I came from an object-oriented background, and I want to say like the concept of immutability and the functional paradigm, it was hard at first, but when it clicks, I think it's the way your brain is supposed to work. Like it kind of forces you to break down problems and solve things the way they should be. And so I think if people think that functional languages are harder to learn, you should give it some time, and I think you'll probably think it's a more natural way to program.
I went to YouTube and I saw that his name is more like a Spanish name, Guero Sin Fe.
Guero. Okay.
Guero. It's not Portuguese, but he okay here. And he mentions the Dave Thomas book. My first book was Dave Thomas book about
Oh yeah,
Elixir.
Dave Thomas is really good. And shoot, the other Dave, Pragmatic Studio. I forgot his. He has some good content as well.
No, Dave Thomas is from
Is that
Pragmatic.
Pragmatic?
No, Pragmatic Studio is other guy. I know, I remember. Yes,
Yeah.
it's a couple
Oh, it's
actually,
Mike.
right?
It's Mike and Nicole Clark, not Dave. I don't
Yes.
know why I had Dave in my head. They're really good. They have really good content as well. So the resources are growing. There's a lot of good stuff out there, and always Elixir Mentor. You can come hang out with me. I have a Discord, and it's
Do you
always
have a
fun.
Discord?
Yeah, I have a Discord. Yep, yep. So that's a lot of fun. Come hang out there. It's growing. I feel like I have. Let's see. I almost have 600 people there. So that's pretty cool.
So I'm going to join your Discord server. I didn't know.
Awesome. Yeah, you're more than welcome. You'll be a good addition. Well, that these hours go past so quick. So if anyone has any questions for Adolfo, now is the time. Otherwise, we're gonna wrap this up. And this has been a lot of fun, Adolfo. Thank you so much for coming on. And I'm gonna have to catch up and make sure I listen to all your podcasts, your English podcasts. I'll have to learn Portuguese if I want to listen to the other ones.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you very much for having me here. As I told people, I'm always on Twitter and also on other. If you are not on Twitter, I'm also on Mastodon and Blue Sky. And you can just send me an email, adolfo@utfpr.edu.br.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's been great. We'll have to do this again. And yeah, make sure you guys follow Adolfo if you're not already. I have I think I have your link tree in the description,
Yeah.
and your X account. So those are probably the best ways to find him. And he's a busy guy. He has 1 million podcasts, 1,000 blog posts, and yeah, it's awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacob. Bye-bye.
Have a good one. Have a good weekend, everyone. Testing.